My name is Jonas Hale, and I've spent most of my life watching people slip through the cracks of this town. Not because I want to, because someone needs to. Stories disappear when no one is looking, and I've made it my job to make sure at least a few of them are remembered. That morning, the one when everything changed for Eli Ward, I was standing across from the old bus depot, sipping coffee that had gone cold before I remembered to drink it. Winter had been slow to leave that year, and the air still carried the bite of a season overstaying its welcome. Behind the depot's brick shell, in the shelter of a crumbling overhang, I saw Eli and his son Noah. They had been sleeping there for the past week. I never asked why they'd left the shelter or why Eli refused to go back, but I'd seen enough men like him to know the reasons were rarely simple. Eli looked older than his 30-something years, thin beard overgrown, cheeks hollow from days spent giving his share of food to the boy. His coat was 2 sizes too big, donated, probably, from someone who never imagined it'd be passed down again. But Noah, 9 years old, small for his age, stood beside him like a little soldier, clutching his backpack to his chest, shoulders squared in a way that made him look braver than he probably felt. The boy reminded me of a matchstick, slight, but ready to spark. They were arguing softly. Or rather, Eli was trying to explain something, and Noah was trying his best to understand. Eli kept pushing his hands through his hair, a nervous habit I'd seen before. He was exhausted, and not the kind of tired that sleep could cure, the kind that lives in the bones. I had just taken another sip of coffee when I noticed her, a county worker, stumbling awkwardly down the alley. Her coat was clean, her hair tied back in a stiff bun, someone not used to walking through alleys at all. She clutched a manila envelope like it was something fragile or dangerous. She checked an address on her clipboard, frowned, then looked up at the depot as if it personally offended her. "No way," she muttered. She stepped closer to Eli and Noah. "Excuse me," she called. "I'm looking for an Eli Ward." Eli stiffened. People in his position don't hear their names spoken by official voices, not unless something bad has happened. But the woman didn't look angry or suspicious. She looked unsure, almost apologetic. "That's me," Eli said cautiously. She blinked, relief and confusion mixing on her face. "Oh, okay. I wasn't expecting." She gestured vaguely, trying not to say homeless. Eli didn't help her. He simply waited. "I'm, from the county executor's office," she said. She opened the folder just enough to glance down. "This is regarding the estate of Harold Ward." Eli's eyebrows drew together. "I don't know any Harold Ward." "Your grandfather," she clarified. The words hit him like a shove. He looked away sharply, as if memory, or maybe the lack of it, had teeth. The woman pulled out a folded document protected in a plastic sleeve. "Mr. Ward passed away 6 months ago. According to our records, you're the last living heir." Noah's eyes darted between them. "Dad, hang on," Eli whispered, almost to himself. The worker handed him the sleeve. Eli stared at it without touching it at first, as though scared it might burn. Finally, he slid it out. The paper unfolded in his shaking hands, a property deed, stamped and notarized. Mountain land, remote, uninhabited, from what little I could see. The woman continued. "It's a parcel up near Marrow Ridge. 47 acres. No structures. No liens. It defaults to you unless you decline. But by law, I have to deliver this notice personally." She exhaled, clearly relieved her job was done. "So here you go." Eli shook his head slowly. "No, this can't be real." The worker shrugged. "Believe me, sir, I didn't think I'd find you at all. But the system said to try this town first." She closed her folder. "If you plan to claim the property, there are instructions inside. Then, softly, good luck." She walked away the way she came, stepping around trash cans and muddy puddles, disappearing back into the world where envelopes always found the right doors. Eli sagged onto an overturned plastic crate. The document fluttered in his hands. 47 acres. His. "What does it mean?" Noah asked. Eli swallowed hard. "It means—" He stopped. His throat worked around something too heavy to speak. I could almost feel what he felt. Fear, hope, shame, disbelief, all fighting for space in his chest. Men like him don't inherit things. They lose things. Jobs, homes, people. They don't get unexpected chances. But maybe, just maybe, this was one. Eli ran a hand over his face. "It's land, bud. Up in the mountains. Might be nothing but trees and rocks. Could we live there? Noah whispered. Eli lowered the paper. I don't know, but I heard the tremor in his voice. Maybe it said. The boy leaned closer, reading the document upside down. It's ours. Ours, Eli echoed, still unsure. For a long moment, they both stared at the paper like it was a small miracle. Something sacred. Something impossible. Finally, Eli stood. Determination straightened his back. We're going, he said quietly. Where? Noah asked. To see it. To see if this is real. Noah nodded without question. That was his bravery. Quiet. Loyal. Absolute. Eli folded the deed carefully and tucked it inside Noah's backpack, as though trusting the boy with it made it safer. Then he gathered their few belongings, a rolled sleeping bag, a chipped thermos, a jacket with missing buttons. They stepped out from under the depot's shadow, and I followed. Not close enough to be seen, just close enough to witness. Because some stories don't wait for permission to unfold. Some stories find the people who need them, even when nothing else ever has. And this, whatever it would become, was one of those stories. We caught the last bus heading north, the kind that still rattled like loose bones when it pulled into a stop. Eli hesitated before stepping on, glancing back at the depot, as if some invisible chain still tied him there. But Noah tugged his sleeve, and that was enough to move him forward. I boarded a few seats behind them. They didn't notice me. Most people in Eli's situation don't look around much. The world has taught them not to. As the bus groaned to life and rolled out of town, I saw Eli press his forehead against the window. The reflection that stared back at him looked older than the man I'd watched earlier. Eyes shadowed, mouth set tight like he was bracing for a blow he knew was coming. The mountains were still hours away, but memory travels faster. And I could see those memories pulling him backward. Noah climbed into the window seat and leaned close to his father. How far is it? A long way, Eli murmured. You been there before? Eli didn't answer at first. His jaw clenched, unclenched. Finally, he said, yeah, a long time ago. The bus lurched forward. The sun dipped lower behind us, leaving a line of gold stretching across the road. I'd taken this route enough to recognize the curve where cell service vanished, the bridge where the river always ran colder than it should, the stretch of forest that grew darker faster than the rest. Noah opened their shared backpack and pulled out a packet of crackers, crushed from being carried too long. He broke it in half and handed the larger piece to his father. You eat it, Eli said. Noah pushed it stubbornly against his hand. We're sharing. Eli gave a small laugh, the first one I'd heard from him. Okay, sharing. They ate quietly. Small sounds, the rustle of food wrapper, the hum of the engine, Noah's feet tapping against the metal floor, filled the space between them. It wasn't much, but it was the kind of ordinary moment most people don't realize matters until it's gone. As the miles rolled under us, Noah grew more talkative. He told Eli about a book he once read in school, about a mountain where treasure was buried. He said maybe their land would have something cool on it. Not treasure maybe, but something. Eli ruffled the boy's hair. Even if it's just trees, that's something. Trees can be treasure, Noah said. If they're ours. That made Eli swallow hard. I could see him working through the idea, ours. A word he hadn't been able to claim in years. The bus lights flickered once. Old wiring. And Noah leaned into his father, instinctively seeking comfort. Eli wrapped an arm around him, pulling him close. It was natural, unthinking. A reflex born from every night they had slept in alleys and under awnings. Eli always keeping the boy shielded from the world. But as the lights steadied, a different kind of darkness settled over Eli. Shame, thick as fog. I recognized it easily. He was going back to a place he'd sworn he'd never return to. A place that had carved scars into him long before he'd lost anything else. When the bus finally hissed to a stop at the foothills, dusk had swallowed the sky. The driver announced a break before continuing on, but Eli and Noah rose immediately. They had reached their stop. I followed them off the bus and into the crisp mountain air. The scent of pine hit instantly. Sharp, resurrecting memories whether you wanted them or not. Eli stood frozen for a moment. You okay, Dad? Noah asked. Yeah, he said, though his voice was thin. Just remembering. The road leading upward wound like a pale scar through the trees. Gravel crunched underfoot as we began the climb. The temperature dropped quickly, and Noah pulled his jacket tighter around him. Is it far? The boy asked. Far enough, Eli said. We'll stop if you get tired. I'm not tired. Eli gave him a small smile. Brave kid. But I could tell Eli wasn't talking about the distance. He was talking about the ghosts waiting farther up the mountain, ghosts he'd left buried years ago. Every few steps, he would slow, as if some invisible force tugged at him, forcing him to relive fragments of a childhood he wished he could erase. I saw it in the way his shoulders hunched, in the way his breath quickened whenever the trees grew denser, taller, like the ones that had surrounded the Ward family home long ago. Noah reached out and grabbed his father's hand. Eli looked down, startled. "What's that for?" "You looked sad," Noah said simply. Eli squeezed back, grounding himself. "I'm okay. Just thinking." He wasn't okay. Not really. But he was thinking, mostly about the boy beside him. About how badly he wanted to rewrite the past. Not for himself, but for Noah. The last curve of the road brought us to a ridge where the land flattened. The shadows were deeper there, pooled like dark water between the roots of old pines. "We stop here," Eli said. "We'll camp for the night and go the rest in the morning." Noah nodded, already pulling out the sleeping bag. As they settled under the trees, Eli sat with his back against a trunk, staring into the darkness beyond. His breaths came unsteady, as if he feared what tomorrow would demand of him. Hope and dread fought inside him with equal strength. But through it all, Noah leaned against his side, warm and real and wholly dependent on him. And that, more than the inheritance, more than the letter, more than the mountain itself, was what kept Eli from turning back. Some people return to the past because they must. Eli Ward returned because his son needed a future. Morning came slowly in the mountains, light creeping between the pines like something cautious, unsure if it belonged there. Eli woke before Noah, stretching the stiffness from his joints. I could see the dread settle into him even before he looked up the trail. He already knew what waited at the top, or at least what used to wait. Noah rubbed his eyes. "Is it close?" "Close enough," Eli said, and he meant it in more ways than distance. We packed up in silence and followed the narrow path. The trees grew denser, the air colder. The mountain was steep here, the kind of climb that forced a man to breathe deeper, think deeper. Eli's steps slowed as though every root and stone reminded him of a childhood he'd tried to bury. One full of harsh winters, harsher words, and a grandfather who believed softness was a sin. The cabin appeared suddenly, rising from the forest like a living thing that had been waiting, patient and stubborn. Noah stopped first. "Dad, is that it?" Eli didn't answer. He just stared. The old Ward cabin looked as though the mountain had tried to reclaim it. The porch sagged in the middle, boards splintered and peeled like they had rotted from the inside out. Moss crawled over the railing, gripping the wood like fingers. One window was cracked straight through, a single spiderweb line splintering outward. Another had no glass left at all, only a dark square where wind sighed through. The roof sloped under the weight of years and storms, shingles missing like broken teeth. The chimney leaned, half covered in thick vines that had grown bold in the cabin's neglect. Yet despite all that decay, the place felt aware, as if it recognized the man standing before it. Noah stepped closer, picking up a stone and tossing it lightly onto the porch. It thudded, and a loose board shifted with a groan. "Looks haunted," he whispered, half afraid, half enchanted. "Not haunted," Eli said, but his voice wavered. "Just old." But his eyes told the real story. He remembered this place too well. I had seen plenty of abandoned houses in my time, but this one was different. It held history the way lungs hold breath. The walls seemed to cling to memory, refusing to let it escape. Eli tested the porch with one foot. The plank bowed dangerously, but held. Noah followed behind him, carefully stepping only where his father stepped. Inside, dust floated in the air like ash. The floorboards creaked with every shift of weight, protesting the presence of life after so many empty years. The first thing they noticed was the stove, a rusted iron beast crouched in the corner, its door hanging open like a tired jaw. Cobwebs filled its mouth. The stovepipe was dented, its metal scarred from fires long gone. Next, the rocking chair, still facing the window as though someone had only stepped out for a moment. A blanket, moth-eaten, brittle, lay draped over its arm. The chair made a faint sound as wind slipped through a crack in the wall, rocking it just enough to stir the air. Noah crept toward it. "Did your grandpa sit here?" "Every morning," Eli said quietly. "He liked to watch the ridge. Said he could tell what kind of day it'd be just by looking at the fog. Was he nice? Eli took a long breath. Not really. There was no bitterness in the words, only truth worn smooth by time. The rest of the cabin was bare. A table with one missing leg, shelves that had collapsed inward, a single boot in the corner, cracked with age. The air smelled of rot and pine, but beneath that, something else. Something faintly metallic, almost like cold memory. Noah's voice cut through the quiet. Dad, what's this? He was kneeling near the wall, fingers brushing something carved into the wood. Eli crouched beside him. It was a panel, one Eli must have forgotten, or had chosen to forget. The wood was loose at the edges, warped slightly from years of mountain damp. With a careful pull, Eli pried it open. Behind the panel lay a small hollow space, and inside, wrapped in brittle fabric, was a folded piece of paper. Is it a map? Noah whispered. Eli didn't answer. His hands trembled as he unfolded the note, its edges yellowed and fragile. The handwriting was sharp, angled, unmistakably his grandfather's. If you returned, it means the mountain kept its promise. Follow what remains loyal. Eli stared at the words, breathing unevenly. Many emotions crossed his face: confusion, anger, grief, disbelief. The cabin seemed to hold its breath with him. What does it mean? Noah asked. I don't know, Eli said. But he did know something. Harold Ward never wrote anything without purpose. And he never believed in sentiment. If he left a message, it meant something, something buried, something deliberate. Noah leaned against him. Maybe he left us something. Maybe, Eli whispered, though the word felt dangerous on his tongue. Outside, wind rattled the broken window. The rocking chair creaked again, slow and steady, like a heartbeat belonging to the house itself. The mountain had waited. The cabin had waited. And now, with the note in his hand, Eli began to fear that whatever promise the mountain had made wasn't finished with him yet. As night settled in, the cabin didn't feel empty. It felt watchful, a silent companion holding its secrets close, waiting to see if Eli Ward was still loyal enough to follow them. Dawn in the mountains arrives like a secret, whispered rather than spoken. The first light did not spill across the clearing. It crept, thin and hesitant, through branches that looked sharpened by the cold. The cabin was silent, but not peaceful. It felt like a place that held its breath while listening for something. Noah was still curled in his sleeping bag when Eli stepped outside. I followed him, careful not to disturb the fragile quiet between him and the morning. And then we all saw it. A shape emerged from the fog, slow, deliberate, impossibly steady. Hooves made almost no sound on the soft forest floor. The outline sharpened as the fog thinned, revealing a horse so old it seemed carved from time itself. Its coat had once been chestnut. Now it was faded to the color of dying leaves. Its mane hung in tangled ropes, streaked with white. Each step looked like a memory learning to move. Eli froze. Noah pushed past him, whispering, "Whoa." The horse stopped a few feet away, as though it knew exactly where to stand. Its dark eyes held something I couldn't explain: familiarity, patience, and an intelligence that felt older than the mountain. Eli's voice cracked when he finally spoke. "Rust." The horse flicked its ears, took one slow step forward. "That can't be," Eli whispered. "You were old when I was 10. But the horse, Rust, kept looking at him with that same gentle stillness. The way some animals look at the people they've chosen, not the people they serve. Noah turned back to his father. "You knew him?" Eli nodded slowly. "He was my grandfather's. But Rust was different. The only gentle soul on this mountain." The boy grinned. "He likes you." Rust stretched his neck forward until his muzzle brushed against Eli's chest. Not searching, not curious, recognizing. Eli stood perfectly still, his breath unsteady. I could see a flood of memories rush through him, none of them gentle, except this one. Then the horse stepped back and nudged Eli's shoulder with surprising force. What's he doing?" Noah asked. Eli looked shaken. "I don't know." Rust nudged again, firmer this time. Then he turned toward the woods. And waited. Noah's smile grew. "He wants us to follow." Eli looked at the trees, dense, unwelcoming, grown wild without human presence. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered. But even he couldn't deny the strange pull in the air, the feeling that something old and buried was stirring. Rust snorted once, impatient. Noah tugged his father's sleeve. "Come on, Dad." Eli hesitated, Not because he didn't want to follow, but because he did want to, and that scared him more. Trust wasn't easy for a man who'd had it beaten out of him for years. But the mountain had sent him a guide. Whether he believed in signs or not, Rust's presence wasn't an accident. "All right," Eli said softly. "We follow." Rust started forward, steps slow but sure. Eli and Noah walked behind him, and I stayed close enough to witness, far enough to remain unseen. The forest swallowed us quickly. The deeper we went, the darker it became. Sunlight struggled to reach the ground, cutting thin streaks through the canopy. The air grew colder, carrying scents of wet moss and old bark. Noah walked with his hand hovering near Rust's flank. "How does he know where he's going?" "He always knew this mountain," Eli answered. "Better than anyone." The path wasn't really a path, more like a pattern of flattened leaves and trampled brush, faint enough that only something with memory etched into its bones could follow it. As we walked, the forest changed. The trees grew taller, their trunks wider. Their branches arched overhead like ribs closing around us. Birds didn't sing. No insects buzzed. The silence deepened in a way that felt intentional, almost watchful. Rust's ears twitched, but he kept moving. Eli slowed once or twice, pressing a hand to an old scar on his forearm. Memories flickered behind his eyes, shadows of arguments, slamming doors, shouts swallowed by the trees. His grandfather's voice echoed in ways he didn't want to remember. "You okay?" Noah asked quietly. Eli nodded, though the tension in his jaw said otherwise. Rust continued his steady march until the forest suddenly opened into a clearing so small and sudden it felt unnatural, like something had carved a circle of space out of solid woods. In the center stood a stone building. Small, low, rectangular. Eli inhaled sharply. "I've never seen this before." Noah frowned. "What is it?" The building was made of stacked stones, gray and weathered, moss creeping between the cracks. No windows. Just a single wooden door swollen from years of rain. Rust stopped at the entrance and lowered his head, as if bowing, as if acknowledging something hidden inside. "This wasn't here," Eli murmured. "Not when I was a kid. I would have known." But the structure looked ancient, older than the cabin, older than the road we'd climbed. It shouldn't have been forgotten. It shouldn't have been invisible, unless someone had kept it hidden. Noah touched the door. "Do we go in?" Rust exhaled loudly, a hot breath of encouragement. Eli placed a hand on the handle. It was cold, unnaturally cold. A shiver ran through him. "Dad," Noah whispered. Eli took a breath. Then another. "We go in. But stay close." As he pushed the door open, the air shifted around us. The mountain had led them here for a reason. Rust had guided them to something Eli was never meant to forget. Something Harold Ward had kept hidden behind stone and silence. And as the darkness inside the building swallowed the light behind us, I knew this path wasn't forgotten at all. It had been waiting, just like everything else on Marrow Ridge. The air inside the stone outbuilding was colder than the forest, so cold it felt like stepping into a cellar carved beneath the earth. Noah stayed close to Eli, wide-eyed, clutching his backpack straps like they were handles keeping him anchored. I slipped in behind them, unseen as always, but alert. The place felt wrong in a specific way, like something once meant to stay hidden had been woken by our presence. Light streamed through cracks in the roof, thin gray beams that cut across the darkness. In those dusty shafts, particles floated like drifting ghosts. "What is this place?" Noah whispered. Eli shook his head. "I don't know." But I could see doubt flicker in his eyes. Some part of him suspected. Some part of him remembered the quiet arguments his grandfather had with men in suits. Men who came up the mountain with clipboards and left looking nervous. Rust stood at the doorway, refusing to enter. The horse pawed the soil once, twice, uneasily. His ears pressed flat, and he made a low, warning sound deep in his throat. Eli moved farther in, boots crunching against gravel. The room smelled of old earth and something metallic. As his eyes adjusted, he froze. "Noah," he said quietly, "stay back." Wooden crates filled the far end of the room, stacked 3 high, smeared with dust thick enough to write in. Each crate bore the faded logo of a long-shuttered mining company, Blackwater Ridge Extraction Company. Noah tilted his head. "What's Blackwater?" "They were shut down before you were born," Eli said. His voice sounded thin. "My grandfather hated them. He said they were thieves." He stepped closer, running his fingers over a crate's stenciled markings. Numbers and letters, coordinates, were printed beneath the logo. Only something was off. Dad? What is it? Eli exhaled shakily. These coordinates, they're not on any official land map. These are off-record sites. Is that bad? It's illegal, Eli said. Very illegal. He found a crowbar leaning against the wall, too conveniently placed, and wedged it under the crate lid. With a grunt, he pried it open. Wood cracked and splintered, echoing sharply in the stone chamber. Inside were cylindrical tubes, sealed, labeled, each filled with something that glittered faintly even in the dim light. Noah leaned in. What are those? Eli lifted one carefully. Core samples. He twisted off the cap, pulling out the long, stone cylinder inside. But this was no ordinary piece of rock. The veins running through it shimmered, deep metallic streaks that reflected the faint light like buried silver and gold mixed with something darker, heavier. This is high-grade ore, Eli whispered. Really high. Noah blinked. Is that good? Good, Eli said, almost laughing. This is worth a fortune. Enough to buy a house. 10 houses. He stared at the sample like it was a living thing. But then his expression shifted, softening, darkening, reshaping itself with new understanding. My grandfather, he breathed. He knew. He knew they were drilling under our land, illegally. They must have found a vein and tried to steal it. Noah's brow furrowed. But why hide it here? Eli looked around the stone room, the locked crates, the sealed samples. And suddenly I saw it. Realization crashing over him. He wasn't keeping a secret from me, Eli whispered. He was keeping a secret safe. He didn't trust the company. He didn't trust the county. Maybe he didn't trust anyone. But he saved the proof. Jonas, meaning me, felt an unexpected ache in my chest. A lifetime of bitterness toward a harsh grandfather collapsed under the weight of a single truth. Harold Ward hadn't been cruel. He had been guarding something that mattered. Something worth protecting, even from those he loved. Noah reached up and touched his father's arm. He left it for you. Eli swallowed hard. Or for whoever came back. His fingers trembled around the core sample. Then, a sound. Soft. Wrong. Somewhere deeper in the darkness behind the crates. Eli stiffened. Noah whispered, Dad? Rust screamed from outside. A shrill, terrified neigh that echoed off the stone walls like a warning siren. Then came another sound. A rustle, a scrape, the faint shift of weight on gravel. Someone, or something, was in the outbuilding with us. Eli grabbed Noah and shoved the core sample back into the crate. We're leaving. Now. He lifted the lantern hanging near the door, but its flame guttered as if oxygen fled the room. A long shadow slid across the wall. Too tall, too thin to belong to any of us. Rust backed away from the entrance, snorting fiercely. Noah, go. Eli hissed. They bolted for the door, stumbling into the cold morning air. Rust turned and ran, forcing them to follow. I ran after them, though my pulse hammered with dread. Behind us. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Following. Eli didn't dare look back. He clutched Noah's hand and ran harder than I'd ever seen him move. Branches whipped past. Stones clattered underfoot. The forest, once watchful, now felt hostile. Rust led them through the trees. Faster now, panic lending speed to his old bones. When they reached the cabin clearing, Eli shoved Noah inside, slammed the door, and braced it with his body. Outside, the footsteps stopped. Silence thickened, too heavy to be empty. Noah trembled. Dad, was that a person? Eli didn't answer, because he wasn't sure. And neither was I. But we both knew one thing. Whatever was on this mountain had been waiting for them long before they arrived. And now that Eli had uncovered its secret, it was no longer willing to let him go. By morning, the cabin no longer felt like a place of discovery. It felt like a target. Eli hadn't slept. Neither had Jonas. Rust paced outside until the first thin light of dawn slipped through the trees, then vanished as mysteriously as he had appeared. Noah sat at the rickety table decoding the scraps of documents they'd retrieved from the outbuilding, his leg bouncing nervously. Eli exhaled slowly. We need help. Real help. Jonas nodded. Then we go to the only man in town who still knows these mountains better than the companies that tried to gut them. The geologist. Retired geologist Hank Destry lived alone on the edge of town, in a house stacked with rock samples like trophies from a long, stubborn war against corporate greed. He opened the door wearing a wool vest and suspicion. This early, somebody better be dying or lying, Destry grumbled. Eli lifted the crate of geological cores. The old man froze. Well, he murmured. That's a third option. They followed him inside. Destry cleared off a table covered in maps and spread the samples flat. His hands, though arthritic, moved with purpose. He turned each core under a magnifying lamp, humming low in his throat. These were taken illegally, Destry said at last. I'd stake my pension on it. Eli swallowed. You're sure? Destry picked up a core flecked with shimmering mineral veins. This isn't surface ore. This is deep vein extraction, and damn rich, too. Worth millions per deposit site. He pointed to the faded company stamp. I know these coordinates. They're off record, off registry, off everything. Someone was drilling where they absolutely had no right to be. Eli felt the floor shift beneath him. His grandfather hadn't been hiding evidence out of cruelty. He'd been safeguarding the truth that could have gotten him killed. Destry looked at him with unexpected gentleness. Son, your granddad wasn't easy, but he was one of the only honest men left in this town. If he hid this, he had reason. The librarian. Next, they visited Margot Lytell, the town librarian, a woman as sharp as barbed wire and twice as difficult to cross. She adjusted her glasses as Eli explained everything. Young man, she said, your grandfather practically lived in this library for months before he disappeared from public life. I always suspected he was digging for records someone didn't want found. She led them into the archive basement, where dust choked the air and old filing cabinets stood like forgotten centuries. Margot unlocked a drawer with a tiny brass key. These, she said, are the minutes from the town council meetings in the late 70s. And here, her finger traced the faded type. Here is your grandfather's name. Multiple times. Eli leaned over her shoulder. Mr. Reed requested the council investigate unauthorized drilling activity. Request denied due to insufficient evidence. Mr. Reed advised to cease making accusations. Margot snorted, which is polite language for shut up or else. She pulled out a stack of letters. These were mailed anonymously to the council. Your grandfather sent them. They detail environmental violations, theft of land, and unregistered operations. Jonas whistled. He was blowing the whistle before anyone even knew the term. Margot gave Eli a long look. He wasn't stubborn. He was trying to protect this mountain. And you. The weight of that truth landed hard in Eli's chest. The lawyer, Dana Crow, ran her practice from a cramped office between a bakery and a taxidermy shop. She didn't look like the courtroom storm Eli expected, more like someone who'd win an argument by simply refusing to back down. After reviewing the evidence, she sat back and blew out a low whistle. Well, gentlemen, this is a hell of a case, Dana said. Illegal drilling, covert extraction, possible land theft, environmental damage, corporate fraud. If even half of this holds up, the company will do anything to bury it. She leaned forward. I'll take the case. Contingency. If you win, I get a percentage. If you lose, you owe me nothing. Noah pumped his fist. Eli managed a tired smile. But Dana wasn't finished. You need to be prepared, she warned. They're going to retaliate. They always do. The retaliation. She wasn't wrong. That night, a black SUV rolled slowly past the cabin, its headlights off. 2 days later, Noah spotted a drone hovering above the property. Jonas found unfamiliar boot prints near the woodpile. Then came the phone calls, silent, but listening, watching. Eli's hands shook as he hung up for the 10th time. Maybe, he whispered, maybe this isn't worth it. Maybe I should take whatever settlement they offer. Walk away. Protect you too. Jonas stared at him in disbelief. You think your grandfather wanted you to run? Eli opened his mouth, but no words came. Noah stepped forward, eyes fierce despite the fear trembling in them. Grandpa hid this for you, the boy said quietly. Not so you could get scared. Not so you could take hush money. He trusted you to finish what he started. The words hit harder than any blow. Eli looked at his son and saw the truth. Backing down would mean betraying not just the past, but the future, Noah's future. He straightened. No settlement, Eli said. We fight. Jonas grinned. That's what I was waiting to hear. Outside, the mountains stood silent, ancient, watchful. And somewhere in the trees, Eli imagined Rust's calm, unwavering eyes, urging him onward. The battle for the truth had only just begun. The letter arrived on a windless morning, hand-delivered by a man in a suit that didn't belong anywhere near a gravel mountain road. Eli accepted the thick envelope, watched the man hurry back to his SUV, and only then closed the cabin door. Jonas and Noah waited at the table. Eli broke the seal. His breath stopped. "It's a settlement offer," he said. Jonas raised an eyebrow. "That fast? They must be terrified." Terrified was an understatement. The company had lawyers, money, and political reach, but they also had decades of buried crimes, and Eli now had the evidence to exhume every one of them. Eli skimmed the document. "They're offering a lot." Noah leaned forward. "Like how much is a lot?" "Life-changing," Eli whispered. "For you. For all of us." But then his expression hardened. "And they want silence." Of course. At the bottom, printed in legal language as cold as steel, was the weapon the company always used, an NDA that would lock the truth away forever. Jonas crossed his arms. "Not happening." Eli crumpled the last page in his fist. "No, not happening." He picked up the phone and dialed Dana Crow. "Negotiations." Dana listened without interrupting, then said, "They'll negotiate. They always do when cornered." Eli's voice was clear, steady. "No silence. No deals under the table. I want transparency. Every word of their wrongdoing made public." "Eli," Dana said carefully, "that's a big demand. Most companies would rather burn than admit fault. Then they can burn." For hours, Dana battled through conference calls with the company's legal fortress. Eli, Jonas, and Noah waited in the cabin, tense as bowstrings. Rust appeared now and then at the tree lean, as though checking on them. By late afternoon, Dana called back. "They cave," she said. "On everything." Noah hooped. Jonas slammed the table in triumph. Eli closed his eyes, letting the relief break over him like a slow, cleansing tide. The settlement. The agreement was unlike anything the region had ever seen. 1. Full financial compensation. The company agreed to pay Eli a sum that could secure Noah's future, repair the cabin, and rebuild the Reed legacy with dignity. It was more money than Eli had ever imagined having access to, but it wasn't the money that made his hands shake. 2. Lifetime protection for the mountain. The mining company would cease all operations in the region, and the mountain land, every ridge, stream, and hollow, would be designated a permanent conservation zone. No more drilling. No more hidden tunnels. No more theft from the land that had raised generations. 3. Official acknowledgement of wrongdoing. A public statement would be issued, naming the company's illegal actions, their attempted cover-ups, and their failure to heed whistleblowers, including Eli's grandfather. Eli ran a finger over that last clause, feeling its weight. "Grandpa, we did it," he whispered. "The town reacts." Word spread through town faster than wildfire in dry brush. Some people congratulated him openly, slapping his back, shaking his hand, telling him the town had needed justice for a long time. Others looked at him with barely concealed envy. A few muttered that he had stirred trouble no one asked for. The old-timers, though, the ones who remembered the whispers, the rumors, the strange trucks in the mountains, looked at Eli with quiet gratitude. One elderly woman stopped him outside the hardware store. "Your grandfather was right," she said. "People didn't listen, but you did." The words warmed something deep in Eli's chest. The outbuilding. A week later, state officials came to inspect the hidden outbuilding. Reporters followed, their cameras flashing as if the small stone structure were a monument from another era. And in a way it was. It was declared a protected landmark, to stand as evidence of what had happened, and as a tribute to a man who had fought alone for the truth. When the group left, Eli lingered behind. Rust stood beside the building, head bowed, as if in mourning or reverence. Eli stroked the horse's mane. "You remembered this place when I didn't," Eli murmured. "Thank you." Rust merely blinked his old, patient eyes. Rebuilding life. With the settlement finalized, Eli could have left the mountain, moved into town, started fresh. But he didn't. Instead, he began repairing the cabin, one board, one beam, one window at a time. Noah helped, carrying tools and learning the feel of lumber beneath his hands. Jonas stayed on most days, grumbling about splinters, but never missing a shift. They rebuilt the porch first, then the roof. The broken windows were replaced with thick, clear panes that let the mountain light pour in. The old rocking chair stayed exactly where it had been, facing the wide world beyond the trees. At night, they sat around a small fire. The cabin felt warmer now, less haunted. Feels different, Noah said one evening. Eli nodded. It's not hiding anything anymore. He looked out toward the woods. If he listened closely, he could almost hear the echoes of his grandfather's boots across the years, steady, stubborn, resolute. The mountain was quiet, but alive. Safe. Protected. Justice had been done. Not the kind written in law books. The kind that healed generations. Eli rested a hand on Noah's shoulder. This, he said softly, is the start of something good. And somewhere in the dark, Rust watched over them, still loyal, still guiding, still bearing witness to the truth that refused to stay buried. By the first blush of winter, the cabin no longer looked like a grave for forgotten memories. It breathed again, slowly, honestly, its timbers warming under the steady rhythm of a life rebuilt. The porch boards no longer bowed underfoot. The windows gleamed with new glass. Smoke curled from the chimney in soft gray spirals, rising into the clear mountain air like a quiet declaration. This place lives again. Rust's new barn stood just a few paces behind the cabin, simple, sturdy, and warmer than anything the old horse had ever known. Eli insisted on building it himself, and I watched him work with a determination shaped by gratitude rather than duty. Noah painted the doors a deep brown, the same shade Rust's coat had been when he was young. Rust spent most mornings roaming the clearing, then returned to his stall by noon, choosing rest over wandering. Age had settled into his bones, but not into his spirit. He had done his part. Now the mountain, and the family it had guarded, returned the loyalty. Understanding the past. One evening, while a thin frost crept across the windows, I found Eli sitting on the porch steps, elbows on his knees, staring out at the silent pines. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "I used to think my grandfather was a hard man. Cold. Like he didn't care about anything except this mountain." He rubbed his hands together, thoughtful. "But he wasn't cold," he went on. "He was fighting. And he was alone." A breath escaped him, half sigh, half release. I judged him without knowing the battle he was carrying. The wind stirred the treetops, almost as if agreeing. Sometimes understanding doesn't arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives in a whisper, after justice, after truth, after time has washed away the fog of pain. Jonas's reflection. I've told stories my whole life, some true, some bent, some borrowed. But watching Eli rise from the shadows of that old bus depot to become the guardian of a legacy he never asked for, that changed something in me. He didn't just inherit land. He inherited a burden, a truth, a wound, and a calling, and he didn't run. Most men, given the chance to take the money and disappear, would have folded. But Eli stood in front of giants, trembling but unwavering, for the sake of a boy and a mountain and a man buried decades ago who had died trying to save both. Eli Ward didn't become a hero. He became something rarer, a man who answered the truth when it finally came knocking. The mountain breathes. Winter deepened slowly. Each day the air grew sharper, but not hostile. There was a lightness now, subtle but unmistakable, as if justice had loosened the mountain's long-held sorrow. Snow dusted the pines in clean white layers, and the land no longer felt like a place waiting to be trespassed or stolen. It felt whole. Some nights, when the wind blew through the ravine just right, it wasn't a howl anymore. It sounded almost like a voice, old, relieved, saying, "It's over." Even the birds seemed to return to the area, hopping along the fence posts near Rust's barn. Peace, it seemed, had a way of pulling life back home. "Dad, are we safe now?" One night, after a simple dinner of beans and cornbread, Noah lingered by the door. His small hands curled around the edge of his jacket. "Dad," he whispered. Eli turned. "Yeah, buddy." Noah's eyes flicked toward the windows, where thick flakes of snow had begun to fall. "Are we safe now?" Eli crouched down so they were eye to eye. I watched his face soften, the kind of softness forged from battles won at great cost. "Yes," Eli said, voice steady as a winter star. He placed a hand on Noah's shoulder. "We're safe. And we're home." Noah leaned into him, hugging him tight. Eli closed his eyes for a moment longer than most fathers would. I knew he was feeling the weight of every night spent on cold ground, every fear he had carried alone. But now the fear had somewhere to go. It melted into the warmth of a place that finally claimed them. Silence becomes peace. By the time the fire burned low, snow was falling in thick, gentle curtains, covering the cabin roof, the porch railing, the barn, and the long-forgotten scars of the mountain. Where silence once felt like threat, it now felt like blessing. No footsteps in the dark. No men watching from the trees. No secrets crouched under the soil. Just quiet. Just truth. Just home. Rust shifted in his stall, letting out a low, contented breath. The sound settled over the clearing like the final note of a long, unfinished song. The mountain had spoken at last. Not with thunder or warning, but with peace. If this story moved you, if Eli's journey reminded you that truth, no matter how deeply buried, always finds a way back to the light, then don't forget to like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the Hidden Treasure Stories. Every story we share holds a message, a secret, or a spark of hope waiting to be found. Your support helps these stories reach more hearts, more minds, and more people searching for meaning in unexpected places. Stay with us. The next hidden treasure is already on its way.